We also have foreign direct investment. This is riskier because you're acquiring firms from another country or developing facilities in that country from the ground up. So if you build in another country, there's going to be a lot of cost involved and a lot of risk involved. The benefit to this is if you build in another country and you build from the ground up and it's yours, you have more control. Joint ventures are one type, and this is when two or more companies join together. So these companies share resources, but we're not actually merging these companies together. So they're independent, but they work together. And then you have partnerships, and this is a voluntary agreement where two or more people are going to co-own a business for profit. A less formal version of this partnership that has less encompassing agreements. It's more of not as formal as a set partnership. It's called a strategic alliance. So when you have international business, there are going to be some challenges, and these can be broken down into three categories. Sociocultural differences is the first one, and this is differences like the culture and language, the difference in language, attitudes, values. It can be nonverbal communication. Punctuality is another one. Business practices. There's lots of these differences. And the best way to overcome these barriers is do your homework. What I mean is research it. Get firsthand knowledge and go to the country, get to know the culture, and be sensitive to that culture. In India, there's lots of examples, but this is one in our notes. In India, Hyundai is a large seller because the company manufactures cars a little bit differently to meet the needs of that culture. Another barrier to international trade is economic differences. Some firms are not going to be successful because of economic differences and economic conditions. The customers may not have the resources to buy the products, and so companies have to get really innovative when they're having these differences and when they have barriers. They have to kind of think outside the box with some of this. One of the biggest barriers in countries is infrastructure, and this is the physical facilities that support that economic activity. And for example, transportation. Think about transportation. That could be a barrier in another country. How are we going to get the products where they need to go, and how are we going to communicate our presence? In other words, other countries may have limited resources when it comes to transportation, communication, energy, your utilities and power plants, and finance, banking, checking, and credit. Another barrier is political and legal differences. There are laws and regulations we have to think about. For example, certain products may not be allowed by that government to be sold, and the desire to have control in a country can hinder movement. And there are all kinds of laws you have to consider. International businesses have to comply with international legal standards. And then you have to consider the political climate. Stability in that country is extremely important. You would not want to start a business in a country that is subject to strife from wars, riots, violence. That's another factor, and that can be a barrier. Another barrier is international trade restrictions. So there are certain restrictions that we have to think about. Tariffs, the taxes levied against imports, quotas. These are limits on how much of a specific product can be imported from one country to another during a certain period. And then you have voluntary export restraints. This is limitations on specific products, on how the amount of that product that can be sent to another nation. And then embargo is you have to consider that there could be a complete ban on a certain item, or it could be a total halt with a particular nation, that we're not having businesses come in from this nation, and we're not buying products from this nation. Free trade is starting to gain momentum, and this is just the unrestricted movement of goods across international borders. Of course, free trade is not a reality, but we have trading blocks, common markets, and international trade agreements that are helping move the world economy closer to that goal of free trade. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, that was established in 1948 by 23 nations, and it encourages world trade among its members. Then you have the World Trade Organization. It monitors the provisions of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. And it also settles disputes involving international trade. Then the World Bank, it was established after the Second World War, and it's a global institution, and it was established to promote international trade and help settle disputes between countries. Then we have the International Monetary Fund, and this is where member nations provide funding in order to promote global economic stability. So this supports stable exchange rates and then facilitates a system that's smooth for international payments. It encourages the nations to adopt sound economic policies, and it promotes international trade. It also lends money to member nations to address economic problems. The best example here for that is in 2020, that the International Monetary Fund addressed the impact of COVID, and it offered immediate debt relief for 25 of the poorest member countries. Trading bloc or trade blocs are groups of countries that have eliminated tariffs. Typically, these countries are close together geographically, and the goal here for the trading bloc is to make the flow of goods be as smooth as possible between two nations. And then you have the common market. This goes a little bit further, and it completely harmonizes the trading rules, which makes the process even smoother. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, this replaced NAFTA in 2020, and it's a treaty with those countries. It eliminated trade barriers and investment restrictions over a 15-year period, and it started in 1994. Critics complain that it creates a U.S. trade deficit. It dilutes environmental and work protection laws. So with this and with NAFTA, the economy has grown with it, but many jobs are being sent to other countries. So we're importing more than we're exporting, and that causes a trade deficit. The European Union is the world's largest market. It's made up of 27 European nations, and it is said to have a combined GDP of about 15 trillion. Now, their currency is called the euro, and it's a single currency for all 27 nations. And economically, the European Union considers itself one nation. And then this last exhibit is reasons to create and eliminate trade restrictions. So here are some reasons to, let me move this down. Here's some reasons to create trade restrictions versus reasons to eliminate it. You can look over those on your own. I know there was a lot of information in this chapter, so let me know if you have any questions.